With the release of Thunderbolts and the debut of Sentry, one of Marvel's most iconic superheroes, we will be putting him in the Avenger gauntlet and see where he stops at. The reason I'm doing this is because even before the movie dropped, the movie hyped him up to be a threat stronger than all of the Avengers combined, and to be honest, I don't think this is really all that true, but we'll get more on that later. Firstly, let's look at Sentry and his feats displayed throughout Thunderbolts. Now in the movie, he stated to hold the power of 1,000 suns. Obviously this is a significant downgrade to his comic self, but even having this amount of power would grant him obviously large star levels of power. Along with the fact that he stated multiple times to be either stronger than the Avengers or stronger than all of them combined, even with a specific guide saying he's Thor, Carol, and Vision rolled into one. And even before turning into the Void, he absolutely demolished the Thunderbolts with him perception blitzing Bucky. Mind you, Bucky is someone who is relative with Steve, the same guy who is reacting to the stronger characters within the MCU universe. And I'm not gonna lie, Sentry kinda blitzed him harder than Quicksilver did in Age of Ultron, pretty much confirming at least up to Age of Ultron or before Phase 2, the Avengers are probably just getting blitzed and folded. Now, when Sentry lets the Void take over, he's an entirely different beast. He should just be stronger than Sentry, so he'd upscale from his previous stuff, along with now having the ability to send you into a trauma domain expansion, or specifically a separate pocket dimension that psychologically scars you for life with your worst traumas. And all he needs to do is just put his hand out and the person just gets deleted and sent to that zone. Although he himself doesn't have the best feats, it seems the narrative seems to be pushing Sentry to be one of the most powerful characters within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But how does he compare to the stronger Avengers? I'll first be going over where Sentry stops at and then see where the Void stacks up against the stronger Avengers. The list of strong Avengers I will be mentioning on this list are Vision / Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Carol, Doctor Strange, and Wanda in that specific order. Starting off, we have Vision, who despite his mediocre performance in Infinity War, Vision is still someone who should still be considered a top tier Avenger. And I only put Tony here just because I think him versus Vision is a good fight, but in my opinion I think Vision has more to bring down Tony than vice versa. Not only does he have the Mind Stone, which is stated to destroy anything that isn't vibranium, which would include nanotech, but even base to base, Tony was struggling with characters like Cull Obsidian, the same guy Vision took a hit from when he was severely weakened. This, on top of Vision's phasing powers, would give him the advantage over Iron Man in my opinion, but you can throw Tony in if you think he just makes the cut due to his performance against Thanos, even though he barely did anything in that fight. Regardless, Sentry cooks both of them as he easily can break and overpower Bucky's vibranium, meaning he'd be able to overpower Vision and Iron Man and break their armor / body. Plus, Sentry is confirmed to be Vision plus 2 other Avengers who I believe are stronger than him rolled into one, and these two along with Vision are stronger than Tony as well, so Sentry more than likely without trying too hard would probably beat these two, and I'd say he'd have about 20 to 25% difficulty with Tony and Vision. Now we can move on to the next one, that being Hulk. The Hulk himself is someone who even I have clowned on in the past, due to his mediocre performance against Thanos and pretty much anything post Endgame. However, even before this point, Hulk was at one point the physically strongest Avenger, and before reaching his peak he could already dent vibranium, and was implied to be stronger than Thor before his awakening. Mind you, he could also damage Ultron, the same guy who's withstanding Vision, Thor, and Iron Man's power at the same time, and even after tussling with Awakened Thor and surviving his lightning strikes, he goes on to take out Fenrir. He should be closer to stronger Avengers and threats like Thanos, in comparison to Tony and Vision, who in my opinion don't really scale to Thanos all that well. Hulk does get dropped by him, but it is confirmed that he was apparently using the Power Stone, which could imply that he's relying on this because his base form might not be enough. Or you could have the interpretation that he was just flexing the stone, it's really up to you. And the problem with Hulk as well is that he's been used as a measuring stick post-Endgame for Avengers like Shang-Chi and Namor, who I don't think Sentry is really losing to at all. And in my opinion, Hulk is just gonna get overpowered worse than he did against Thanos and would crawl back into hiding even despite having the brains and the brawn. Anywho, Sentry got it with 30 to 35% difficulty. Next up is Thor, who in my opinion is the most overrated Avenger we have to break down right now. Before you guys start typing in the comments how he tanked the power of a star, no. Bro died to a portion of a neutron star, and then even after gaining a new amp and regenerating off of this, his best feat was off-guarding Thanos with the weapon that can counter the gauntlet. And had Thanos been on guard, he would have used it in a different way. He becomes more powerful than ever by Love of Thunder, but we can't even quantify this to any degree. And a lot of people like to suggest that Sentry is only above the likes of Thor from Phase 2 because apparently they only have information on this Thor, even though they should have information on the stronger forms of Thor and in his fight with Thanos. So it doesn't doesn't really make sense for them to really only mean Age of Ultron. Thor's best scaling comes from him using both of his weapons to amp Iron Man and then lose to base Thanos. Like, I'm sorry bro, this guy stinks. After Thor stops being mentally nerfed after talking to his mother and gets Mjolnir, which magnifies his abilities, he still gets rocked by base Thanos. And the amount of energy that he withstood from this star that killed him is like barely enough to destroy a country, if even that. So no, he's not star level, and even if Thor was star level, Sentry has the power of 1,000 suns, so Sentry would just cook him. Thor is also a part of the Avengers that make up Sentry's power, so yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't see Sentry losing this fight. I think Sentry got it with about 40 to 45% difficulty, which leads us into our next Avenger, that being Carol, who's actually the strongest Avenger that went up against Thanos aside from Wanda herself, and should be considered the strongest active Avenger right now. Now, once again, if we take these statements at face value for Sentry, Carol is probably weaker than Sentry as she makes up a portion of his strength. However, we know Captain Marvel was also able to reignite a star, which in my opinion is a better feat than what Thor managed to accomplish when dying. However, she isn't reigniting the core from the inside out, meaning she herself wouldn't be star level exactly, rather closer to like multi-continental to planetary, which makes sense considering the Power Stone can destroy planets and apparently she took the full force of it. So for this video, we'll be saying she's closer to planetary than anything, but you can make a case for her being star level better than Thor. I believe she has actual feats to suggest that she could beat Sentry or even press him due to her being able to absorb energy and use what she absorbs against him. And since Sentry has less experience than Carol along with a lack of speed feats, I think Sentry would be backed into a corner, thus triggering the void. I think if you take the statement at face value and you think Sentry is superior to Carol in every single way, then sure, Sentry got it with about 80 to 90% difficulty. But I think with the feats shown in her upgrade in Captain Marvel 2, I do believe Sentry would trigger the void. And I think the void by that point is just going to put his hand up and send Carol into the Shadow Realm. And now by this point, we are going to be speaking on Avengers who force Sentry to trigger the void, and these two are Strange and Wanda, of course. The first one up is Strange, who I believe has the best means to take out the void aside from you-know-who. Strange has a wide array of abilities. He can teleport you, send you into another dimension, and even transmute your attacks. And if he has the time stone, he can manipulate time itself and even put you in an infinite loop. In my opinion, Strange more than likely could tag the void before he does if he has the stone. However, base Strange probably does get sent into the realm just because he loses and even gets tagged by characters that he should not be getting tagged by. Like, I'm sorry, how did Spider-Man finesse you in a one-on-one? Anywho, even if he is sent to the void, I don't think this really means GG's because he has the means to escape a dimension like this. He's been in separate time spaces before, and his portals even have access to different dimensions as well, so it's more than likely he could find his way back into the real world and take out the void. I do think it is a very close fight, but the void just doesn't have the feats to say that he can bring down Strange, and Doctor Strange has a way of getting out of the void. So I think the void loses with 100% difficulty. And the last hero, of course, we have is Wanda, who by far is the most powerful Avenger and the most powerful superhero within the Marvel Cinematic Universe by this point. When she was enraged in Endgame and by the time of WandaVision, she had powers that rivaled, if not already surpassed, Doctor Strange, and then in Multiverse of Madness she gets access to the Darkhold, which quite literally allowed her to solo the Illuminati and specifically kill Professor X, who sends you into a mental gulag similar to the Void. Although it's not the same thing, and I think the Voids is definitely more effective than Professor X's mind hacks, I think if Sentry were to send her into the Void, Wanda would definitely be able to overcome it, track down the very source of the Void, and kill him herself. It sounds a little corny, but I mean, Wanda has been through so many traumatic experiences. I think by this point, and specifically this version of the character, would not really be fazed by it all that much. Strange and Wanda, in my opinion, are the only two heroes who can confidently beat Sentry in an all-out battle, in my opinion, which I guess means the statement is true, I guess. Tyler, actually, he's stronger than the active Avengers right now? Alright, bro, you got it. But technically, he's stronger than a team of Avengers, just not when Wanda and Strange are on the team.